Hello, hello, fellow testers. We are at the Testing Minutes podcast, podcast about software testing, brief and straight to the point. And here is our first and really like a premiere episode that we are doing in English, because before that it was mostly and only Ukrainian, but we wanted to share some wisdom from another testers from around the world. So we starting to have guests that talks in English. So our first guest is Simon Thoms. He's the community leader at Ministry of Testing, and he has a lot of experience in building communities and actually is a software testing. So welcome, Simon, to our podcast.
Well, thank you very much. To be part of your podcast is a real privilege. And to be, the first, I guess, English speaker to join your sessions. Honestly, it's a real privilege. So, thank you so much for having me.
Great. And for those who maybe doesn't know you a lot and doesn't know nothing about Ministry of Testing, can you briefly tell us about your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going back many years. So let's go back to 2003, where I fell into testing from a customer service job. So I was getting involved in some user acceptance testing. I didn't even know what testing was, as I think a lot of us testing professionals, we stumble into it. And got into software testing then and have never looked back since. So what's that, about 20 or so years now, have built various quality assurance teams and test teams from scratch, moved around different industries, got into a lot of different consulting jobs as well. At one stage, I had my own business as a software as a service, providing a tool for people who do exploratory testing. In the meanwhile, I've been involved in the testing community, in particular Ministry of Testing, for many years now. You know, I can't even remember the official date that I first joined the community, but I would get involved in the online forums. I would help out at some events. I'd end up speaking at some meetups and then speaking at one of the events called Test Bash. I officially joined the company back in May 2021. So coming up to 3 years fairly soon. Just a love for testing, a love for community, and the opportunity that I've seen it create for many, many people across the globe. So I'm in a very privileged position, very fortunate that I get to geek out as a tester and I get to geek out as a community person and kind of combine the two. Let's
Amazing.
jump on in.
Yep. Actually, we usually start our podcast and our episode with some terms, so people understand what we are talking about, what are the root of some, words or terminology, and when we are talking about community, so what is a community, and what are the difference between community? For example, in companies, it's maybe like guilds, community of practice, etc. So what is it?
Yeah. So what is community? I guess at one level, I would say community is just about people connecting and finding things that they can connect about. In our case with Ministry of Testing, we define ourselves as a community of practice being software testing. We are a super diverse community, all sorts of different backgrounds, all sorts of levels of experience. Yet we are mostly, as a community, software testers or quality assurance professionals, or quality engineers, quality coaches, quality leaders, all of those different titles for our passion is about software testing and quality. So I think, on one level, there's a reason for us to gather, because maybe in our workplace, we don't have other people who are like us and aren't facing the same challenges. we may not have anyone to connect to help teach us about certain things, whether it's a certain type of technology, whether it's a certain methodology. So people come to a community of practice like Ministry of Testing to learn. That's certainly one reason that community exists. It's a place to learn. I think the other part of it, where I see a lot of people who get involved in our community, is they love sharing and they love to contribute, and they get a real good feeling when they share their knowledge and experience with people. So I believe community is also a place to share. It's a place to go, you know what, I've got all this knowledge, I should get it out there. And in the process of getting it out there, that person, not only feels good about sharing stuff, they also cement and refine their knowledge and experience. Let's take an example. When someone's putting together a talk, often they have to do a bit more research. They have to dive a little bit deeper. They have to work out how they're going to articulate the thing that they're going to talk about. And in doing so, they level up their knowledge and then can pass that knowledge on to other people. So I think community is also about knowledge share. So connecting people, knowledge share. I think on one level, community can also be about friendship and connection. So a sense of belonging, a sense of like not feeling alone and isolated, that you've got your group of people that you could go to whenever you need them. You can kind of disappear for 6 months and know that you can come back and go like, hey, welcome back. Like, it's cool to see you. How you been? And we see a lot of friendships, in particular at Ministry of Testing. People who perhaps have got to know each other online, and then 2 or 3 years down the line, they end up at an in-person conference. And they'd be like, no way, we know each other, but we've never met in person. And it's just like, it's really cool when you see that happen. So I think community can also be about connection and friendship, beyond kind of just like, hey, I'll help you, you help me. So yeah, that's where I go. But I think, Artem, to also think in terms of your question around different types of community. So I've talked mainly about community of practice. You could say there's also community of product. So you could be a tool vendor and you have a community of people who are big fans of your product and service. They may be on your support forums, helping out customers. So that's another type of community as well. I would define that as a community of product.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. Nice.
Yeah. So from my personal experience, I know that if you learn something, it's like one level of, let's say, learning. But when you're trying to explain to someone that you learned, maybe in the form of like personal mentoring, maybe in the form of talk, or even like a short video, then you discover a lot of gaps in your knowledge, and you are trying to fill it, and you are actually learning even more. And because like from the first sight, especially when you are learning, when you have some level of experience in some topic, and you are learning a little bit more, you can get like a false impression that, hey, that's totally easy. So it's like really easy to learn. I already know it. But when you are starting to explain, then you understand that, hey, yeah, totally. It's like not so easy. So yeah, communities, it's all about like the learning and sharing. And Artem, I know that you know about it a lot, and you are like sharing the same ideas in your community.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, actually, as for my community, I didn't create like some kind of mission what I have in community, and it starts with sharing, because many of personal students who I mentor trying to share their ideas, and I'm trying to share their ideas to other persons. Brilliant. But it was like, okay, I got this idea, I go to another person, share this idea to another person, and now I try to all this person to collaborate together to get this information between each other, and trying to find some good connections and actually friendship. For now, when any events, like offline events happens in Ukraine, in some places, in some cities, there some of the communities, they trying to catch up each other on this event and to talk. And it's lovely
Very
to see.
cool.
Yeah.
And I think, and just to add to that, like that I think in the role of someone who is focused on community. So for yourself, Artem, I imagine that you probably see some things that other people don't see, and that's not in any arrogant way. It's more that if you're sort of a bit further back and you'll step back, you're like, I can see potential in that person. I could genuinely see that they're just a little bit more encouragement, a little bit more, let's point them in the direction of this particular thing, or let's, bring them into that conversation, or show them this video or this article or whatever, or GitHub profile. You can kind of see it because you've spotted patterns and you've seen people go through, similar things. It's not to say that you can kind of copy and paste, because our individual contexts are important to respect and everyone is an individual. Yet you can see these patterns and you can see opportunities for people, which they might not see, maybe through self-doubt, or they just don't have that visibility or that level of experience. So I think the other cool part of community is helping people realize their potential and help them go, oh yeah, I'm all right at that, and maybe I could do that thing, or I didn't even know that existed. So when I think of community in terms of testing, I feel it's analogous to us trying to reveal kind of unknowns. It's like stuff we have no idea that we could do with our careers, right? And someone just reveals a tiny little bit and you go, oh wow, I didn't even know that existed. And we find this when we're testing, right? Like, I didn't expect that. Or, we really need to look over here when, 2 days ago, we had no idea we should be looking at this particular part. So yeah, I find that part fascinating, that we can help people, we can spot these patterns and point people in the right directions for something that they might not be aware of.
Yeah, so we just talked about why community is important and what is community. But the next question, so imagine I'm the tester and I'm just not involved in any community at all, neither on my job or elsewhere. So how can I start community at my work, for example? Because there are some testers, but how to start it?
So thinking in terms of an internal community of practice, is that right? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I guess the starting point is you have to find a reason to gather. And if you don't have that reason, then you're going to struggle. And I think that's okay to acknowledge that. So I think, I can think of times where I've tried to set up internal communities of practice at companies I've worked at. This is before I became an official community professional. And my motivation was really like, we need to step away from the day-to-day of like, got to get this release out, like, we've got to run this regression suite, go. And just a way to sort of step back and go, like, maybe we should read this thing together. Or maybe if we, read a chapter of this book, or perhaps if we watch this talk, we could learn something and bring that to our company to help us, be more efficient, help us explore risks in a more efficient and effective way. So I think it was, I think if people are going to get started with setting up, I guess what you'd call an internal community of practice is find a bit of a reason. I also think if you don't know your reason yet, there's at least 2 people who have an interest in a particular topic, and it may be a certain topic within the world of testing. It could be, I don't know, AI in testing. It could be API testing. It could be a tool like Cypress or whatever. And you want to go a bit deeper, but do it in a bit more of an official way. Then that's the start of a community, right? I know it doesn't have to be this grand thing where like, hey, everyone, every month we're going to meet up and we're going to bring 50 of us together. Like, that's kind of jumping way ahead. I think is if you can find a theme that at least 2 people are interested in, and just commit to doing one thing with that person, and then like commit again, and then commit again, and try and build a bit of like cadence or repetition or a bit of a habit, how you gather. It can be in many ways, right? It can be in person, online, asynchronously. You could be sharing an internal newsletter, all sorts of different ways. I think if you can find a way to connect two people, that is a starting point of a community.
Mm-hmm. Actually, from my perspective and my experience, I always struggled with the thing that in the company that more than 1,000 person in general, we have 60 QA and testers, and even more, most of them are in the same cities. We just sitting in separate room. We don't know each other, and I was like, wow, how we can build a good quality product when everyone just sitting in their rooms, in their, I don't know, not on even teams, and we don't communicate and share ideas and stuff like this. And this is how I start some initiative to involve more people just for know each other. Because if we don't know each other, we don't know who is colleague and who is do something. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that, and it that will then. I think in that example, I think it's brilliant advice, because then you'll find that commonality, the kind of things that naturally come up in conversation. So I think typically how we focus on building our community with Ministry of Testing is a lot of it is observation. We observe what conversations are happening. We're making note of this stuff. We're trying to spot patterns. We're creating buckets of topics that, this group of people keep talking about this thing, or this person's interested in learning this. They're struggling with this. They're really good at this. And naturally over time, it's kind of like community research, really. You're then building a picture of what is the scene? What's happening here? What conversations are happening? And then how can you help out? How can you lift up people that perhaps don't have a voice? Or how can you encourage people to go and chat with this group of people because they're talking about this thing and that they're interested in that thing? So it's spotting these patterns, spotting these connections. And I think that's another good way to start building a community internally, is just get a sense of what people keep talking about. And things that people struggle with is certainly one way to do it. You document all these sort of pains and challenges that people face. That's certainly one way. Another part of that is find out what people are naturally excited about, and then chase that excitement, and then get caught up in it yourself and be let's keep this conversation going. How can we keep going with this particular topic that we're all interested in? And that takes energy. It takes energy to keep it going. And I've experienced myself in companies I've worked in, where there's only a couple of you sort of really pushing hard, and no one else is getting involved. And you're like, why is no one else getting involved? And then you kind of get frustrated, and you go through that cycle of doubting that this is going to work. And it does take time, right? I think for anyone looking to build a community from scratch, it does take time. So I would certainly recommend not giving up early. Stick to it. Go for at least a year trying to make it happen, and see what's possible if you really want to grow a community.
Amazing, because my community is how many? 2 or 3 months.
Oh, cool. Oh, you're at an exciting stage. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
But another question that I have is that when I think about community, the first thing that I think of is we are gathering as a group of people, and someone just talked or made a talk about some topic, and after the topic it can be some questions or follow-ups, and that's the end. But what else, what other forms of engagement or forms of participation can be in the community, especially when we are before the COVID era, we had mostly office work, But right now, the most of the work is like in remote or in the partially in remote in office. But let's talk about like different kinds of activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Whew, I guess there's all sorts of options when I think of what community is and how it can exist. So yeah, certainly people doing talks and, you know, have a Q&A and a discussion is a good one. If you're just focusing on events as your kind of part of your community, I guess there's other techniques like running a lean coffee, where people you know bring their topics to the table. There's no agenda at the start, and then you vote on what you want to speak about, and you spend like 8 minutes on each topic, for example. I guess this is quite sort of in the detail, but I'll share a few more. You could run an Ask Me Anything session where you invite an expert into, you know, it could be from another company. You bring them in and say, this person knows everything about Cyprus. Like, ask them any question, like bring it on. And then that person is an expert, can share their experience. And that's, we've done that a lot at Ministry of Testing. And it's probably one of my favorite formats for an event. You can have a really good conversation. We take questions in the form of like questions via the chat. And then we have a host asking those questions back to the expert. That works really well. You could also have a panel discussion where you have 3 or 4 people themed around a topic and a host is asking questions from the audience. That often works well. Yeah, I think if you want to go beyond events, if you think in terms of community beyond events, you could start a newsletter. So you could, on behalf of your community, gather really useful information. It could be very niche to a particular topic. It could be just in general, like, here's what's going on in the software testing world. And you gather it every week. It could be like, I don't know, 5 bullet points, like, here's what I've seen. Check out this article, check out this talk, go check out this person's GitHub page. And then you're, on behalf of the community, doing research so they don't have to. And you collate that information and then give it back to them. And then you could say to someone like, hey, do you want to help me write the newsletter this week? And then they go off and do a bit of research and they feed into that newsletter. So you're kind of co-creating in a way and building like excitement for sharing information. And again, it's just another form of sharing information. You could start an internal forum where you do online discussions, and you could go, do that in an asynchronous way. So at Ministry of Testing, we have a forum called The Club, which I know, Oleksandr, you've contributed to on a number of times. So very grateful for that. And that's a great place for people to gather and to share their knowledge, to ask questions of each other. So something myself and Rosie tend to do on The Club is we spot conversations happening in other places. So it could be on LinkedIn or on X or on Blue Sky. And we go, that's interesting. Let's pull that onto The Club and let's ask a question related to that thing. So either we're bigging up the person who shared something over here and then say, hey, let's have a conversation about it here, or we're amplifying the conversation where it's happening. So we use both approaches. So I think the kind of concept of community naturally lends itself to thinking in terms of events. However, and kind of the way I think of it is it's bigger than events. It's a way to share information, have conversations, and that can take many forms. It could just be a Slack instance or a Discord instance, for example. And then for people to take action, like what can they do with that thing? How can we keep momentum on the thing that we've just discussed? And then how can we bring more people into that action? How can we help them contribute? So it's kind of thinking in terms of like building a way to encourage people to continue to want to contribute, either because they want to improve their knowledge, either they just feel like good because they get to share, or they just want to, find a way to connect with other people because they don't know what they might discover. They're just super curious. So yeah, I kind of there's all sorts of ideas bubbling in my head, but I appreciate I've talked a lot, so I'll stop at this point.
No, it's amazing because I think I will will listen this podcast for several times to catch all the ideas you just talk with engagement with people, because some of them are common for what I'm using for my community and trying to engage people in this community to make any like talks, sharing some interesting articles and stuff like this.
Brilliant.
But many of them other engagement tools, I would say, I will keep in mind, and maybe I will do some of them.
Yeah. And I think there's the other side of it, and we briefly touched on it, I guess. You could, I mentioned about people getting something out of contributing. Some people might do it altruistically. They might just go, look, I'm just going to give my knowledge away. I don't want anything in return. Don't worry about it. So we offer that at Ministry of Testing. So we pay people to put together a talk. We pay people to host events, to be a specialist on an Ask Me Anything. We pay them to write an article. Some people will donate that money to a scholarship fund that we set up. And for those that aren't in a position to pay for Ministry of Testing Pro membership, or they're not able to pay to attend an event, they can apply for the scholarship fund. So for some people, their payment is giving back to the community. I also think in terms of community is like, what is the reward? So one example I can give you is we have badges that we give out to our community. So we recently ran an exercise where we awarded 20 community star badges to people that have just done awesome things over the last month. And, a computer didn't tell us who they were. We meticulously looked back at the previous month and were like, these people have demonstrated these types of behaviors, which is really good behaviors for our community. These people are kind, these people are helpful, these people are grateful, these people are generous, these people are, knowledgeable, these people are, calm. And we'll take note of this every month. Like every day we'll make a note of who's doing what in the community and who is being kind, who is sharing, who's being knowledgeable. And then we celebrate those people, like, because they've really gone for it and they've really, demonstrated they are really good community people, and they should be rewarded for that. So yeah, we dished out some stars last month, which felt lovely to do that, and no doubt we'll do the same again once we get to the end of this month.
Yeah, but the biggest, from my perspective, the biggest challenge that I see in building the community is first, of course, it's find people who wants to join, or your, let's say, first new joiners. But the second biggest challenge is how to encourage people to share and to, for example, to do a talk, even a small talk. Because it's like really stressful for the most of the people, because even if you're talking about some online talk, not in front of a lot of people, but it is also stressful. But how to encourage and maybe how to find people who wants to do it and how to help such people to succeed in this?
Yeah, great question. I think the role a community lead can play in that is really coaching them and being able to sort of ask that person questions about the thing that they want to do a talk about. And in doing so, that tends to give that person confidence, because they then realize, oh, actually, I do know my stuff. I could talk about this thing for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And, it doesn't have to be perfect. And, let's give it a go and see what's possible. I think if you can create an environment where that person could practice, they could practice with just one person, they could practice with a small group of people before they hit the bigger stage, so to speak, that can definitely help. So, for example, at Ministry of Testing, we encourage potential speakers to practice talks at meetups, online meetups or in-person meetups, and then they can get to the stage where they build the confidence to feel good about going on a bigger stage at one of our big conferences called Test Bash. I think it just comes down to practicing, and as someone who's supporting people who want to do talks, is giving them the encouragement to say, you know what, just go for it. You do know your stuff. Like, tell me what you know about it, and I will play it back to you. And if I can play it back to you, that is proof that you know your thing. And yes, we can talk about what makes a good presentation, and the finer details of how to craft your slides and all of that stuff. Yet the important bit is that person being able to tell a story, being able to say, this is my lived experience of this particular thing, and they might worry like, no one wants to hear from me, or this talk's been done before, but it hasn't. None of it has been done before. Every person in our community is unique. And when they do a talk, it is unique, 100%. Unless they ripped it off and they're pretending to be someone else, which we've never had so far. That individual is a unique person, and we encourage those people to tell their story, their lived experience. Yes, they may be referring to things that people have spoken about before. Of course, they may be talking about some theories or some methodologies or models or whatever, but applying it to their context. I think, connecting this with our world of software testing, when we try and solve a testing problem, we look at the context, right? We look at like, okay, well, I'm not going to apply best practice because it doesn't really exist. Like, what does that mean? It's like, here's the problem to be solved. What tools do I have? Like, whether it's methodologies, approaches, actual physical tools to solve this problem. And I think we can apply that when it comes to encouraging people who want to get into public speaking. Their context is what matters.
Actually, I can see the common pattern in many people who wants to share their knowledge, but the first stopper for them is like, I don't know what I can talk about. I don't know what topic, what the name of my talk and everything like this. And I just asking them the simple question, what the topic you can talk for many hours, like for 3-4 hours from now. And for some of them it's like the pain points. For some of them is like, okay, this is Jira. For some of them is like requirements testing, and for some of them some other kind of topics. And now, okay, so let's start with this topic.
Love it. That's brilliant.
What we can talk about it inside. What is the pain for you in this topic?
I love that approach. And what I like about the approach you described is it would feel so natural to that person that maybe they are so deep in that topic. Like, well, I use Jira every day and I know the ins and outs of Jira and I find this challenges. Like, why would I want to talk about that? It's like, well, maybe some other people on the planet aren't aware of this stuff. Like, you've become so good at it that you don't realize you're so good at it. Like, so sometimes like people have gone beyond like their expertise to realize, wow, they've got real value there. They've got real valuable knowledge to share. So Artem, I love your technique of the 3 hours. Like, what could you talk about for 3 hours? That's brilliant. It's very cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and the same applies. For example, it applied to me when I learned English. I at some point of time I struggled to talk, basically, and so I tried again in small group of people, but never succeeded. But at some point of time, the teacher just asked me which was the last book that I read. And that was a point that I just had a spark in my head, and I just did not realize that I talked for maybe 20 minutes in a row in plain English to the English speaker, and I described the book that I read. So it's a matter of team that really touches you. That's the first point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very cool.
If we are going back in the days when you start your community for MOT, what was your main objectives for building it?
Well, so I joined Ministry of Testing. It was coming up to 3 years in May. So it was actually started by a lady called Rosie Sherry. So Rosie Sherry is the founder of Ministry of Testing. She's the current CEO of Ministry of Testing, and just an all-round brilliant community professional. And she was a tester back in the day, so I think she's got about 22 years of testing experience. And for her, I think the motivation was, you know, she's always learned by connecting with other people. And it was like, how can I find a way to connect with others who do what I do, and how can we help each other out? And I think in one instance, it was a newspaper. So it started as a newspaper called the Testing Planet. There was actual physical copies printed. You can get the digital copies. There's an archive somewhere. And then it went on to become I think it was called the Software Testing Club, which was a forum. It's an online forum for people to gather and, you know, share stuff asynchronously, ask questions, help each other out, that kind of thing. And eventually became a conference called Test Bash. So I think that's probably about 12 or 13 years ago. And it's just grown from there, you know, evolved into local meetups across the globe. So that would be, you know, passionate people based in a city would go, oh, you know, we've got a bunch of testers together. And Ministry of Testing would say, well, we can, you know, you can use the Ministry of Testing umbrella. We can help promote it. And they're like, oh, brilliant. And then like, we're try and help you find more people to join your local meetup community. And it's just grown from there. But yeah, Ministry of Testing has grown to, how would I describe it? It kind of exists on most platforms is one way to describe it. And, you know, we as a community co-create in many different ways, whether it's writing articles together with the community members, whether it's putting together talks, hosting events, speaking at events, gathering at local meetups. And it's pretty fascinating how it has grown. I think I often reflect that I think it has also come with the territory as us as testing and QA professionals that we might be the minority group within a development team. And I mean that in just pure numbers, where, you know, you might have, I think we all probably had this in our career where you join a team, there's 10 developers and there's you as the tester. And you're just like, oh my goodness. And they're all like throwing stuff at you and you're just like, oh, this is way too much. So I feel that the community has benefited from that and has partly grown because of that reason where, you know, before I joined community, I had, you know, the only people I knew who were other testers were the people that I had hired into my team. Like I remember meeting the first tester who was already there and like we became buddies and it's like, wow, like another one who's doing stuff that I'm doing. This is amazing. And I think as a community of testing professionals, not just at Ministry of Testing, but globally beyond the Ministry of Testing community, I think there's that sense of connection that we sometimes feel up against it, even though, you know, in a modern engineering team, we're all owning quality, we're all owning our testing efforts in various different ways. But I still think there's that sense of we feel slightly isolated, therefore we need to find others who share similar challenges. And I believe that's also allowed Ministry of Testing to grow because of that connection.
And when you get the first people joined Ministry of Testing and any other community, so how to scale the community, how to involve more and more people?
Oh, that's a great one. There's something to be said about keeping up momentum. And I think if you are in a leadership position, you know, you are kind of leading the way with that community. There's no sense of, oh, I'll just set it up and then, you know, it will then run itself. That just doesn't happen. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. There's no computer or machine that you can kind of press play and it just keeps on churning out the good community stuff. That doesn't happen. So there is a lot of taking leadership and leading by example. So in demonstrating the behaviors and things that you want to see in your successful community, or that you want to be successful, you got to lead the way on that. You got to demonstrate, like, you got to be the person sharing the articles. You got to be the person encouraging people to speak. You got to be doing talks yourself. I think where it gets to scale is finding people who are up for co-creating, who can sort of step into more of a leadership role. So they want to start helping you find other people to do things. They might, become someone who's like, this person now becomes responsible for trying to put together this newsletter each week, for example, or they may help you co-organize an event. They may go out and be the person who goes to find people to speak at your event. So I think it's finding your buddies, finding those people that are passionate, and just working hard with them to see who's up for it, see who can commit their time, and if you can reward them in some way as you grow, all the better. And that may be through just their contribution. They feel good. It may be in a monetary way, maybe some other incentive. I think that's important to acknowledge. And I think it can sometimes get tricky when you have to have those conversations with people. But I think it's okay to establish them and say, like, if you do this, what would be a good reward for you? And I think it's okay to have that conversation. And I think thinking in terms of like internal communities of practice, that reward could be, well, I'll include this on my CV. Not that I'm going to go elsewhere to another company, but it might help me with my next promotion. I'm not just doing my day job, so to speak. I'm also doing this community stuff within the company. I'm gathering people. I'm bringing information together and sharing it with others. I'm leveling us up as a team because I'm doing all this community work. So that in itself might lead to a reward of a promotion, or perhaps a move into a leadership position if they're not already in a leadership position.
Now I'm trying to reflect on what you say, and when the people from my community will see and listen our podcast, they will ask, why are you not doing the thing that Simon says? There are a lot of different interesting ideas.
I'm sorry about that.
No, I mean, I'm totally understand, because when I started, it's like everyone who just new joiners into community, they kind of shy to share anything inside. And as you said, you need to lead by an example. And that when I first trying to make like talks, article, news, like useful articles for share, that trying to share different kind of knowledge and different stuff that may work for some people. Actually, when I'm talking about the main objectives of my community that I'm trying to build, for me it's like to have a supportive people, like a supportive environment where people can support each other and help them, not with knowledge sharing only, but in personal way. Like if you're actually we have it's kind of forum, and we have like a branch of the forum. We call it like I don't know how to translate, but it's some kind where you can scream or
ranting.
Ranting, yeah.
Ranting for something, and
just get it out. Absolutely.
And everyone can support you in that way and say like, okay, don't worry, it's fine. Don't worry, you're good, doing great.
That's a good space to create. And I think if you can get to that stage where people feel comfortable sharing their frustrations, and it's not just all formal and everyone's polite. Of course, you want people to be polite and to respect each other. And I think having a code of conduct is essential. These are the behaviors. This is where if anyone crosses this line, they're out. And, we are very strict with our code of conduct at Ministry of Testing. There's also that part where, and it's amazing you set that up, Artem, to create a space where people can just go, this is frustrating. Like, I've had enough of this thing. And like, this is really annoying me. Like, of course, and we want to encourage people to be positive and upbeat, but sometimes you just got to kind of get it out, right? And have a group of people that can just listen, and they just listen, and they don't, you don't need to respond to this. It's just me sharing this thing, and people just acknowledge it and go, yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm absolutely hearing you.
Cool.
Yeah, but what about people who will listen to this podcast and want to try and start the community? So which resources other than this episode they can use to get this knowledge about community building? Maybe there are some books, I don't know, or at least articles, or maybe some sessions.
Yeah, I would say the first place I would go to is a place called Rosieland. So rosie.land. So actually Rosie Sherry, the founder of the Ministry of Testing, this is her community for community professionals. There's a lot of good content that is open to all. There's also a paid-for community that you can join, and you kind of get access to so many different things, to speak to other community professionals, articles, like a whole load of stuff. But that's my go-to place. So that's like the community I hang out in as a community professional to help each other out. And, similar to the Ministry of Testing community, where you got people who are experts on certain topics within the world of community. And yeah, you learn a lot, and you help each other out, you support each other. So I think that would be a good starting point. Once I made the decision that I wanted to go full-time into community and kind of leave like the hands-on test consultancy stuff, I did a really good book. It's by John O. Bacon. I wonder now if I read it, whether it would still be relevant. Perhaps it would be. I can't remember the title of it, but yeah, John O. Bacon shares some good stuff. He tends to be a bit more traditional community. I don't think he's quite as kind of cutting edge as I would say Rosie Sherry is, and the community that we're part of. But yeah, I'd say that's a good starting space.
Yeah, great. So I actually didn't know that it is a community, special community for people who wants to build a community.
I know, it's so meta, right? It's so meta. It's like, hang on a minute, I'm in the community of the community people. But honestly, it's great. Like it certainly, particularly if you want to sense check, perhaps you're dealing with a complex situation where you're trying to make a decision, and there's no real definitive answer. So you sound out your idea to other community professionals who may have faced a similar challenge. And then you get feedback and you're like, okay, that helps me make my decision. So it's again to your point about having a good sounding board. It can also be good for that as well.
Cool. Yep. And actually, sometimes you're alone, right? And you're a tester, and you're maybe not looking for community. Let's try to sell these ideas that you need to look for community. Why is it important to be in this stuff, and what are benefits to stay in any other communities? It doesn't matter which one, but why is it important to be in community?
I mean, on one level, there's one level, and it sounds quite, how would I describe it? It sounds quite loose. Yeah, I think as humans, we need to connect with other humans, right? And we can probably convince ourselves that, oh yeah, but I like my own time and my own space. Of course, like we all have different ways of connecting with people, and some people love being around people and that's where they get their energy. Others need to step away from people and get their energy by themselves. So I'm in the latter. After this session, I know I'll be totally wiped out. I'll be like, I've got to go and recharge my batteries. Should just be me chilling out on the sofa. So I think fundamentally we're built to connect with one human and another, and there's something special that happens when you connect on a certain level. So for folks who, I think to your point, Artem, who aren't looking for community, if they stumble upon it and they're like, they will have that moment. They will have that moment where they find like, oh wow, I've got something in common with these people, and this is kind of a bit weird, but I'll just go with it and let's see what's possible connecting with these people. I think as testers, we're pretty curious people as well. We like asking questions, and we like to discover things and find out what's possible. And I think we can apply that to community as well. Just give ourselves a bit of extra curiosity, and then we can reveal some useful things that we thought weren't there before. So that's like one side of community. I think the other side is purely practical as well. Like, I don't know how to do this thing. Nobody at my workplace knows how to do this thing. I need to go and ask someone. And that's it, right? And that sounds like a very kind of laid back and a bit like, that's all I want the community for. But there are some people in our community who do that. They pop up 6 months and then they like ask a question, they disappear, pop back up again with another technical question, and then disappear. And that's cool. That's totally cool. They are as much part of our community as the person who's, say, for example, on our forum, the club, every day, they're speaking at this event, they're doing this, that, and the other. I think, everyone has a place in community. And the benefit for that person is really based on their own individual desires and needs. Clearly, I'm a huge advocate for community. Clearly, I've seen how it's helped my career. Clearly, I've seen how it's helped hundreds of people in our community, find jobs they never thought were there, give themselves self-confidence that they've never had before. At the end of the day, think, wow, I've genuinely helped some people. Like, that is life-changing stuff that they have helped people. And they would have not have got that had they have not made that little bit of a jump to join a community. So it can be life-changing. I know that sounds pretty serious and pretty full on, but it can be, particularly if people feel isolated, which we, let's face it, post-COVID, it's complicated. And of course, it's very complicated in the world right now. People can feel isolated. And community is one wonderful way to help people not feel alone, to find, find purpose if they have self-doubt. So it can be very powerful if people choose to go for it. And for those that don't, it's totally fine. It's more like, I got a question, just need an answer, see you later. Cool.
Why not? And reflecting on your words about the engaging and talking with people, when I like make some consults, just talking with other technician person, I always curious why they say like, I don't want to talk with people, I don't want to work with people, like I just want to work with my technical stuff, with tools, with different technologies. And I was like sitting here like this and think, okay, you will find many interesting things in the future that you need to communicate with people to make a good software, to make a good job, and also find answer for your questions. You can't find answer for your questions without people.
Yeah, exactly. And I can understand why some folks do feel that way. And I think we have to, my take on that is understand their context and get a bit deeper as to what's really happening in their world. And without getting too deep, it can be complex for some people, and they might struggle in social situations, or there might be a type of neurodiversity that person may have, where interacting with people is stressful and is hard work. So of course we should respect that, and it's just trying to find ways that would work for them to really find a benefit, given what's going on in their world. And that can be hard to find that. I think asking perhaps some questions that might open them up a bit can help. and as that, there is that fine line between, asking too much, that you are pushing the limits too much with your connection with that person, but also thinking, well, I can't not ask this, because let's just see, where this person's at and how open they might be to becoming part of this community. So yeah, it can be tricky, I think, reflecting on that, Artem, particularly, finding what questions to ask, and also, really listening with intent to truly understand that person, I think is a real skill in community as well. It's being able to really listen.
So we just talked a lot about the communities, and I think that our listeners right now had a lot of reasons why they need to join maybe one community or maybe even multiple communities. Why not? It's like all sharing and learning. And one particular community that people can join is Ministry of Testing. It has a lot of interesting things to learn, and to also wonderful forum. And I can say that your latest I don't know how it's called, but when you are joining, it's like a virtual setup when you're joining with a lot of testers, and then you can just talk on some random topics, but you see a lot of people in person. It's like a, let's say, mini conference for an hour. I can call it like that way. It is also an interesting way how you can collaborate and knew a lot of people from around the world. So yeah, join Ministry of Testing. It's really nice, I think.
No, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, we're trying. So we offer a number of different ways for people to connect at Ministry of Testing. So I think that the simplest way would be for people to go to ministryoftesting.com/events. That's certainly one way to get into the community. So one event we run is on LinkedIn every Friday. It's called This Week in Testing. I'm really fortunate I get to host it, and I pull together my notes from my week's worth of community research and play it back to the community. Like, this is what I've been observing. This is what people are talking about. This is what so-and-so wrote about. Check this out. This is a cool conversation. I then invite people up on stage, and it's just a voice-only event, so really easy access. People can talk about whatever. I ask them how their week's been, and we go from there. Usually some really good conversations come from that. So that's one way to get involved. We also have recently launched a thing called the Test Exchange. So this is an interactive session where people can share a bit more about themselves. They can say if they're looking for a job or if they're hiring. They kind of talk about things they're good at. They also share what things they want to learn. And then we put people in breakout rooms, and we try and get people to talk and then build connections that way. And then off the back of it, we encourage people to set up some calls to keep that conversation going. There are meetups around the globe as well that people can get involved in. Check out that, ministryoftesting.com/meetups. You can get all of the list of the places across the planet that some local meetups are running as well. There's other stuff I could talk way more, but I will stop there. But I would say check out ministryoftesting.com, look for events, and that's certainly one way to get stuck in. And also, as I mentioned before, we've mentioned before, we have our forum called The Club, so club.ministryoftesting.com. Honestly, there's some amazing chats and conversations going on all the time. Like, there's a live chat, and there's also an asynchronous forum style. Get involved. You're most welcome if you're not familiar with it.
Yep. And one of the huge benefits of join community is, like, sometimes even one word may change your life. This is
100%.
This is really important things. All right. I think we need to finish up with our podcast episode. And first of all, I want to thank all the listeners that are staying with us for this long, I would say, hour of this podcast. But don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe, and put the turn on the bell.
Yeah, and you can also drop some comment to this episode and share your favorite communities and whether you are involved into some. Maybe we'll find some other communities that we don't know about. And we want to say thanks, really big thanks to Simon for spending an hour with us and telling a lot of new things and really fascinating things about communities, because before that episode I did not know much about communities except of like their existence. But right now I'm pretty motivated to just not to be passively involved in the community, but contribute more and more into the communities that I'm involved. So thank you, Simon.
Honestly, thank you so much for having me on your show. And thanks to your listeners for sticking with us. It's been an absolute privilege to speak with you and to learn from you both today. And I open an invite to anyone if they want to connect with me on LinkedIn and kind of get involved with ministry testing. If you've got any questions about anything that I've shared during this episode, perhaps I can jump on the comments as well and reply to stuff through yourselves, or reach out to me and any questions you may have. Hopefully I can be in a position to help. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to chat with you both. Thank you.
Thank you, and see you in the next episode.
Yeah, see you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.